Good afternoon, Lomita ISD students. Today I'm going to be reading a story from the Diary of Gus, the ghost-faced dog. The Flash Flood. School was finally out, and Ethan met his cousin Cal at their grandparents' ranch on Memorial Day weekend. The boys and their dogs, Gus and Luke, could not wait to go hiking. Grandma always worried about the boys when they went far from the ranch house, but Grandpa said the boys were old enough to go exploring with their dogs and that she worried too much. It was hard to get cell phone reception at the ranch, so Grandma bought 3 powerful walkie-talkies. She gave one to Ethan, one to Cal, and kept one for herself so they could all keep in touch when the boys wandered far from home. Ethan and Cal agreed to call Grandma on the walkie-talkie if they ever needed help. They decided to use Channel 10. The boys got up early Saturday morning to go exploring. They put on their backpacks, which they had packed with their hiking supplies the night before. That morning, Grandma had added plenty of food and drinks for the boys and their dogs. "Y'all be careful and watch out for snakes," Grandma warned as the boys and their dogs were leaving. "Just call me if you get into any trouble." Ethan, Cal, Gus, and Luke then began their longest adventure together. They were all sitting on the bank of Lucy Creek after hiking for hours when the storm came from nowhere. The boys and dogs had been enjoying the beautiful creek just moments before. Ethan and Cal were skipping rocks and throwing sticks in the creek for Luke and Gus to retrieve. Suddenly, the sky turned dark and the rain came pouring down. "We need to find shelter from this hard rain," Ethan yelled over the loud wind and thunder. "Let's go to the cave on the cliff," Cal shouted back. It was not exactly a cave, but the boys called it that. It was a rock overhang about 12 feet high over a flat rock floor. The floor went about 30 feet back, so the boys and their dogs were able to stay out of the pouring rain. The cave was right underneath the top of the cliff overlooking Lucy Creek. "This is perfect," the boys agreed as they climbed inside with Gus and Luke. The boys took off their backpacks and wet shirts as they were cold and shivering. They hung them up to dry on an old tree branch that was in the cave. "Let's build a fire," Ethan said. Cal and Ethan gathered the dry wood from inside the cave. Finally, they found an old rat's nest made with dry grass, which helped them get the fire started. They had matches in a waterproof bag in their backpacks. The boys had a good fire going in no time. As they were drying out by the fire, Cal's walkie-talkie sounded. It was Grandma calling them. Cal told her where they were and that they were warm and dry. "That's great news," Grandma said, "but there's a flash flood and tornado warning for our area, so y'all need to get back home as soon as possible." The boys looked out from under their safe overhang but couldn't see anything through the driving rain. "We can't go out in this or we will probably slide down into the creek. I think we better stay here until the storm is over," Cal said to Grandma over the walkie-talkie. "Okay, you can stay there," Grandma agreed. "Grandpa and Uncle Jake will try to get there and help you get out. The water has never come up as high as the overhang before, but if it does, you could be washed down the creek." For the first time, the boys began to worry. "We didn't think of that," Cal said. "We thought we were safe here." "You probably are," Grandma agreed. "I just want you to watch the rising water and keep us posted." The boys' Uncle Jake was home from college. He was a senior at Texas A&M University, and he played center for the Aggie football team. He and Grandpa got some rope and raincoats and jumped in their 4-wheel drive truck. They started for the overhang on the cliff. However, they soon found that the water was too high to cross at the concrete slab over the branch of the creek. Then they tried to call the fire department for help, but their cell phones were not getting a signal. The phone at the house was out of order too. Meanwhile, the water was rising dangerously closer to the overhang. Ethan had a radio in his backpack, so he got it out and turned it on the local station to hear news about the storm. As he listened, a special announcement came over the air advising how dangerous the storm was. In fact, a car had just been swept off the low water crossing on the county road going over Lucy Creek. A man and woman had been rescued further down the creek. They had taken off their seatbelts and were trying to get their 4-year-old daughter out of her car seat when a huge wall of water hit the car. The parents were washed through the windows, and the whereabouts of the car and the little girl were unknown. Here's a picture of the car floating down the creek. Ethan and Cal did not know at the time, but the little girl was her cousin Skylar, who was going with her parents, Jet and Sarah, to visit Uncle Jake at the ranch. "That must have happened just up the creek from us," Ethan exclaimed. "Maybe the car is coming this way." Cal took out the 100-foot rope from his backpack. "Let's tie the rope to the pecan tree outside the cave," Cal said. "Pecan trees have very deep roots, so it will be safe to hold us if we need to climb out." Cal's dad is a fireman, and he had taught Cal and Ethan how to tie tight knots for rescues. When the rope was secure, the boys started shining their flashlights in the rushing water below. The water was still rising. They saw that a huge uprooted tree, along with a lot of other debris, was stuck across the creek like a dam. It was causing the water to back up. "If that debris keeps the water backed up, it'll rise up to us in no time," Ethan observed. All of a sudden, the dog started barking frantically. Soon, the boys spotted a car with its headlights on, floating down the creek. It stopped when it became caught in the debris right below them. Both boys started climbing down the rope to see if the little girl was still in the car. She was. The boys climbed in through the open back window and tied the rope around the little girl. When she was secure, they took her out of her car seat and climbed out of the window with the child in their arms. Here's a picture of little Skylar. The boys kept slipping and sliding on the muddy cliff as they climbed up the rope. Luke was an extremely strong dog, and he climbed down the cliff to help the boys. The cliff had a steep slope, but Luke was able to climb up and down it. He used his 4-paw drive to help the boys by letting them grab his tail to pull them up. Finally, they were all safe in the shelter of the overhang. They all looked down just as a huge wave of water came along and washed both the car and debris on down the creek. "That was a close call," both boys said in unison. The little girl was crying, but when Gus and Luke lay down on each side of her by the fire, she started petting them. They licked her hands and face and made her feel better. Ethan and Cal told the little girl that her parents had been rescued and they were fine. They found out her name was Skylar, and they gave her one of Grandma's good sandwiches and a green box of apple juicy juice. Skylar drank all the juice and fell asleep after just a few bites of the sandwich. Ethan emptied out his brand new backpack and cut a hole in it so it would go over Skylar's head like a poncho. He cut slits on each side for her arms to go through, and it covered her up. The boys both agreed that she was a brave little girl, and they were very proud of her. "We've got to let Grandma know we found Skylar," Cal said. "Her parents need to know that she's okay." Cal tried to call Grandma, but his battery was dead. Ethan's walkie-talkie still worked, so he called Grandma and let her know what was happening. The boys were surprised to learn that Skylar was their third cousin. Everyone was extremely thankful to hear that she was safe. "Since everyone is okay, you all just stay where you are and we will get to you as soon as we can. We will get word to Skylar's parents and the rescue workers," Grandma told him. "It's going to be a long night," Cal said. "At least we still have some sandwiches, juice, and chips. Grandma always packs more food than we can eat, but this time I'm glad." The boys took turns sleeping and watching the water below. The dog started growling on Ethan's watch, so Cal woke up. "What are they growling at?" Cal asked. "I don't know yet," Ethan answered. The boys saw that Gus and Luke had their ears folded back. Their eyes were bulging and the hair on their backs was standing up. The boys started shining their flashlights where the dogs seemed to be looking. There was a mountain lion trying to climb into the cave. "I bet that mountain lion always comes in here to get out of the rain," said Ethan, "but this time we got here first." The mountain lion was not going to leave the cave. It was going to attack, when suddenly Gus attacked it first. Gus clamped his teeth around the big mountain lion's throat, but the mountain lion sunk his claws into Gus and was tearing into his back. Then Luke jumped onto the mountain lion, biting him ferociously on the back of his neck. Luke tore the mountain lion off Gus, but then both Luke and the mountain lion started tumbling out of the cave. They slid down the cliff into the rushing water below. "No!" yelled Cal. Everyone was worried about Luke. He had saved Gus, but now he was being swept down the raging creek. After a few minutes, Gus's ears perked up. He listened intently. Then a very wet Luke appeared, strolling in just like nothing had happened. Cal, Ethan, and Skylar ran to Luke and started hugging him. "How did Luke get out of that scary water?" Skylar asked. "Luke is the best swimmer I ever saw," Cal answered proudly. "He could swim his way out of anything." Soon it was almost morning. It had been raining all night and the water was just a few yards below the shelter. Above the rain, they heard the loud sound of an Apache helicopter flying overhead. The boys immediately started sending an SOS distress signal with their flashlights, like they had learned in Boy Scouts. It was 3 fast flashes followed by 3 slow flashes and then 3 fast flashes again. It's a picture of the helicopter. The Apache helicopters were from the nearby Fort Hood Army Base. They had been out all night searching for any victims from the terrible storm. One had landed near the ranch house to see if everything was okay there. Grandpa told them about the stranded children, and Jake flew with the soldiers to direct them to where the boys and Skylar were. As the helicopter hovered over the ledge, a soldier lowered the rescue team down with a harness. The men brought up the children and dogs into the helicopter and quickly flew them to safety back at the ranch. The soldiers told everyone that Ethan and Cal were true heroes for rescuing Skylar and surviving the storm and flood. Skylar's parents were so happy to see their daughter again. They could not stop crying and thanking the boys for saving their precious little girl. After Ethan and Cal finally got cleaned up and stretched out into their beds and relaxed, they agreed. That was an adventure we'll never forget. 2 days later, when the Lampasas paper came out, it had a picture on the front page of a wrecker pulling a car out of the debris from the flood. In the picture, a huge mountain lion was leaping out of the car window. Thank you for listening to the story. Y'all have a great day.